Welcome to the final episode of this season of Chronic Boss Unfiltered. I'm your host, Lilly Stairs, and today we are switching things up, and I will not be the interviewer, but I will be the interviewee. And the amazing woman who is interviewing me is my colleague and dear friend and incredible entrepreneur, Lauren Perna. Lauren is a two-time founder. She runs Lauren Perna Communications, a life sciences writing firm. And she also runs the Mentally Fit Founder, which is the brand that carries all of her mental health advocacy work. Lauren has served as the chief community officer of Chronic Boss for the past few years. She has been an incredible advisor to me, and she is really at the heart of our community. Everybody loves her. Everybody loves Lauren. And so we're so lucky to have her here with us today. Lauren, thank you for being here with me for the final episode of Chronic Boss Unfiltered this season.
Thank you so much, Lilly. Oh my gosh, it's so awesome to be on here. As you know, I am such a fan of yours. So to be your interviewee, interviewer, this is such an awesome opportunity. I feel so honored.
Yay. Well, and we'll be reversing roles again because Lauren will be on next season of the Chronic Boss Unfiltered podcast. We will be talking all things mental health, going sober, entrepreneurship. There's going to be a lot wrapped up in that. So definitely be sure that you keep listening and go follow Lauren. We'll let you know where you can connect with her at the end of the episode. But Lauren, I'm going to now pass the baton to you. Like I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
Okay, so take us back to the beginning. I know your story really well, but I have a feeling these guys don't have a good sense of where you were in the very beginning of the Lilly Stairs journey of, being a chronic boss and a patient advocate. Take us back to the beginning.
Yeah. So the very, very beginning, which I don't talk about as much, you'll often hear me talk about when I turned 19. And I know we'll get to that because I had some really life-changing diagnoses. But my journey actually started as a patient with a capital P patient when I was 7. So I was diagnosed with psoriasis, which is an autoimmune disease. I did not know it was an autoimmune disease at the time. We just thought it was a skin condition. And I had these little dots that were all over my body that were scaly, and I was so self-conscious about them. There was a lot of work that went into treating it. I would actually have to get up 3 days a week before elementary school, and my mom would drive me into the dermatologist's office in the city to get these light treatments. So I had that from a very, very young age and didn't realize that autoimmune disease was ravaging my body at the time, that there was the chance that I could get more. So it started very young. And then
Kids are so mean. And something so visual, is so
it's
tough as a
hard.
kid.
I always wanted to wear long sleeves, even in the summer, because I was just really self-conscious about it. So it was challenging. And I did go through a lot of different treatments. And Lauren, having you here on the podcast as our mentally fit founder, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my own mental health journey, because that also started before I was diagnosed, had these other diagnoses later in life. And I don't talk about this a ton. I haven't shared a lot publicly. I've shared a little bit, but when I was 13, I was actually diagnosed with OCD.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I feel like OCD is something that people really misunderstand what it means. A lot of people use it as like an adjective or kind of like a joke or something, but it is a very serious condition, and it's also not kind of like what they portray in the movies or on TV. So what did it look like for you? And tell us a little bit more about how you deal with it today.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you called that out, because there are so many people who go, "Oh, I'm so OCD about that. I'm so OCD about keeping my kitchen clean." And it's like, well, there is a form of OCD around cleanliness, right? Or having to do repetitive tasks or motions. But mine actually presented in what was a much less common way. And well, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's not a much less common way, but it's not what it's typically portrayed as. So myself and my family didn't really know what was going on. It took many years to get to an actual diagnosis. But the way that it manifested for me when I was younger is that I would feel guilty, I would think I would rack up all these things in my brain that I thought I was doing wrong. Some were legitimate, but some were just totally they made no sense at all. Like in 6th grade, I was like, "Oh my god, I think I tried to sniff that white out to get high." I haven't done drugs my whole life. Like I wasn't trying to do that, but these were the thoughts that popped into my head. And my compulsion was that I had to tell my mom. And once I told my mom, the guilt would be relieved. So I literally lived life feeling guilty all the time. Like that feeling of guilty when you have a pit in your stomach, that was how I felt every waking moment of the day until I was able to tell my mom what I thought I had done wrong. It was all consuming, truly.
That's so interesting. I know a lot about mental health, and I actually don't think I knew that full scope of OCD. And I think that's why there's such miscommunication about around the disorder, because there are so many different iterations of it.
There are.
So, yeah. So is that what still happens today? How have you dealt with it? Tell us how things are now.
Yes. Well, I am on what I like to call Sexy Lexi, my Lexapro. And I love her. I take her every night. Yeah, Lexapro medicine has made an unbelievable difference for me. It has from the time I got on it when I was young to now, and I've been on a couple different versions of SSRIs, which is just a very common type of mental health medication. It changed my life. And I went to a psychologist, like, and thank God that I had parents that were open to taking me to a psychologist and putting me on medication, because that's still back then and even still now is something that a lot of people will not do and a lot of parents will not do. So I was lucky to be able to get the treatment that I needed. And I kind of went back to functioning pretty normally. I would still say I'm a highly anxious person. I do have generalized anxiety disorder as well, but I feel like what millennial doesn't at this point?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just how we're bred.
Yeah, yeah. So I have it looks different now. It's not the same. So if I were to be off of medication, which I did try to taper off of medication a year or two ago and it did not go very well. And so I said, "You know what? Nope, I'm going to stay on the meds." But it looks different. It manifests differently, but in the same thought where I'm getting obsessive thoughts or intrusive thoughts that I can't get out of my head. And so that's what I've struggled with now. But not necessarily like when I was younger and I felt like I did something wrong and needed to tell my mom. It just manifested in a different way. So it has stayed with me. It is something that is well under control. I do have a therapist that I work with, but I don't work with my therapist as much on my OCD anymore because that's controlled by medicine. We're working on just me becoming a better person and growing and managing relationships and all that good stuff that all of us should be in therapy for.
Yeah, general life needs, because we all should be in therapy. You should get your doctor, your dentist, and your therapist.
I like it. I love it. Check, check, check.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about the mental health. Now take us to when you're 19. And this may be the story that people have heard. But tell us a little bit more about that life-changing moment.
Yeah, that is really when everything changed for me. So, when I was 19, I had just wrapped up my freshman year at Northeastern University in the heart of Boston. I loved it. I was so happy and just thriving. And I started to get some pain in my left knee, and that ended up spiraling within a few weeks to total body pain and to the point that I wasn't able to move. My mom was dressing me, she was feeding me, and it took a couple of appointments. They were testing for Lyme and parvovirus and all of this stuff because here I am 19. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm otherwise healthy. And I did get a diagnosis of psoriatic arthritis. I was shocked because at 19 and you hear the word arthritis, that's something that my grandmother has. That makes no sense. But it turns out that 30% of people with psoriasis will get psoriatic arthritis. And that was never communicated to me or my mom at any point in my journey. And I was diagnosed with psoriasis when I was 7. So I get that diagnosis. Very sick, trying to find a medication that works. 6 months later, I land in the ER. I'm in and out of the ER 3 times in one weekend. That's a whole nother story because the doctors thought I was faking my pain. What else is new for women with pain and chronic conditions? And then I'm there for a couple of weeks. I'm admitted and I receive a Crohn's disease diagnosis. Bleeding ulcers in my small intestine, can't even sip water without feeling pain. And so now here I am. I'm 19. I'm lying in this hospital bed, so sick. Morphine isn't even touching the pain. And I've been given these diagnoses that I will live with for the rest of my life.
And you're 19. Like, what are you thinking? What's going through your head? Like, my life is over probably.
Yes, it feels, oh my God, who's going to love me? How will I work? I have all these, and mind you, I'm just at the start of my college
Your
career too,
life.
right? Yeah, my life, right? I had this awesome friend circle. I was really excited. I was studying communications and marketing and loved it. I just felt I had this rich, full life ahead of me, and this felt like a oh my God, what am I going to do? This feels like it's really going to hold me back in so many places. But it also was this moment for me. I've always been a person who I take what I'm given, I process it, and I say, "Okay, you know what? We gotta make a change. I gotta make an impact. I've gotta make a difference." And what happened was I typed these conditions into Google, and now it would be like ChatGPT I'm typing it into, but I typed it into Google, and the term autoimmune came up, and I had never heard the term in my life, and I was mad because there's over 50 million Americans who are living with an autoimmune disease. And many of them are diagnosed women, 80% of them are women diagnosed between the ages of 15 and 30, but there was no awareness at the time. We've made so many improvements, but there was no awareness at the time. And so at that moment, I didn't know what a patient advocate was, but I became one. And it has become my life's work to make an impact on the lives of people living with not only autoimmune conditions, but any chronic condition that is impacting you on the day to day. So that's really the genesis and my origin story, and my life carrying all of these fun conditions.
I know. Oh my gosh. So what was the very first kind of like patient advocacy campaign that you built? Straight from the hospital
Straight
bed.
from the hospital bed. Okay, so I won't go too deep into this one because I talk about it on the episode where I talk about giving and how giving was a business strategy in my career. But I ran the 50 cents for 50 million campaign, which was a campaign to raise awareness and funds for the 50 million Americans living with autoimmune diseases. And I did that when I was in college, and I got all my friends on board, and I assigned them on all roles to take
Yep,
part.
I kind of remember. I think I had met you when you were finishing that or something
Yes,
like that.
yes, we did. Lauren and I worked together at Mass Bio. That's how we know each other. So we've been biotech girlies for quite some time now. But actually, before the 50 cents for 50 million campaign, this is like a little fun fact that I don't talk about all the time. And I don't know if it still exists online. I actually meant to check before we jumped on. Autoimmune Barbie. I had a blog called Autoimmune Barbie. This was, mind you, before we had the era of Barbie and the amazing movie that just took the world by storm. So I was really ahead of my time. But there was a blog called Autoimmune Barbie. And that's where I started when I was in recovery because I had to take some time off from school. And I said, you know what? This is where I'm going to start. Yeah.
Is your username when I first met you on Instagram. So
Yeah, actually, also on Twitter, which is like a real throwback because I mean, it's not even Twitter anymore, and I don't
yeah.
use X as it is. But yeah, autoimmune Barbie.
So yeah, it sounds like you were destined for this career in patient advocacy. How did you end up making that career choice, like going full time from, patient to patient advocate to then this is your career?
Yeah, so I was at Northeastern, and Northeastern has an incredible co-op program where you have the opportunity to work for 6 months and then be in classes for 6 months. So you get to try out and get professional experience. And I had a professor who said to me, Lily, you should definitely do something in biotech. And I said, what is biotech? And he said, they make the medicines that help people like you. And I said, oh my God, these are literally, this whole industry is based in Boston. We're the Mecca here. These are the
Yep.
people who have literally saved my life. I should totally work in this space. I didn't know what biotech was, never a science or math girly, but there was a space. And so I ended up, as I said, at Mass Bio with you, where which is the heart and real epicenter of biotech and pharma in Massachusetts. And so I learned so much there, ended up in that role, ended up learning about patient advocacy as a career track. And my brain went, oh my God, this is the most perfect fit. And
Tell
so
people a little bit what Mass Bio is just so they have
yeah,
context.
yeah. So MassBio is a trade association for biotech and pharma companies. Actually, I feel like Lauren, you should.
I
I'm
know
starting to give
this.
this, and I'm like, why am I saying it? Lauren was the head of membership, so she can tell us what you tell
Yeah,
us
so just
about
to give you guys a
that.
little context of why that is such a good fit for someone like Lilly and myself, MassBio is it's a trade organization, meaning companies join the organization in order to get access to benefits, discounts, network, policy people, really the whole life science ecosystem at their fingertips. And when their companies join, all the people at the company join as well. So that's great for people like me and Lily that are trying to build our careers and meet people in all components of the industry. So Lily was able to meet people that work in patient advocacy. But we should put the caveat there that this was so long ago, sorry to say, but patient advocacy was really just kind of in its infancy when you started, your career, right?
Totally. Even now, it's still a relatively young field. Patient advocacy didn't exist like scientist or, existed in the world of biotech. So it is relatively new. All that time ago, it was also extremely new. And so what I did was I identified because we were at these events with all these people and I said, "Oh my God, I need to connect with all of the patient advocacy people." And so I asked for informational interviews. And this is advice that Lauren, you and I give is to ask for informational interviews, and I really did. I wanted to learn, and I did. And what's crazy is that the work that I did there, learning from all of these people through informational interviews, set me apart. And many of those people that I interviewed all those years ago are actually now my clients at Patient Authentic, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the biotech industry, life science industry. It is very insular, and we all stay in touch. And that's what kind of makes it so cool too, is that everyone's really willing to be like your referral partner.
Yes, totally.
So, what drove you to start Patient Authentic? Tell us a little bit about kind of the moment leading up into that. I think this is a cool story that people will want to hear since I do know this one, but.
You know this one. Well, this is when we were just praising the biotech industry, but now I'm going to throw a little shade at the biotech industry because I was looking for a role in patient advocacy. And actually, I was referred to a position at a biotech that was working in rare autoimmune disease. And autoimmune disease is my jam. A lot of my clients at Patient Authentic come to me because that's my world, right? Not only am I living with it, I'm the board chair of the Autoimmune Association, the largest global organization for autoimmune disease. Like that is my bread and butter.
It's your thing.
Yeah, that's my thing. So I was positioned, and again, it's still a pretty new field. So there aren't that many people who are versed in patient advocacy to even fill these positions. But I digress. So I interviewed and I was told I was really a great fit. But then off the record, it came up that I was, quote unquote, according to another VP at the company, too young to step into a director position, and it would have upset the apple cart. Yeah. And that was real fuel, added a lot of fuel to my fire because I just knew what a great fit I was. And they were literally making this decision probably based off of a few years of experience. And it's a bone I have to pick with a lot of industries, but I think biotech and pharma is so obnoxiously strict about education, experience, age. And it's holding them back because they're so
I ran
obsessed
into
with
this
those. Yeah.
similar.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
frustrating. It's really
Yeah, because my
frustrating.
background was so unique and they're really just always looking for people that have like exact years of experience. And we are different animals, so that always makes it challenging.
So challenging.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
you found that information out, and the next day you went to massdev.com and signed up for your
Well,
your
not
your business.
exactly, but it was a tipping point where I kind of went home and I was chatting with loved ones. It was actually over the holidays. The timing worked out that it was around this time of year, the holidays. And so I started talking to my parents actually, and I was at a startup at the time, and I said, "You know what? I actually feel like I could do all this." At the startup, I was doing so much. I was doing everything from admin to like biz dev to running client work to invoicing. And I said, "Why couldn't I do this for myself?" I totally could. And I had never being an entrepreneur was not this is not like something that was in my family. It's not something I ever thought about doing consciously. It just sort of I fell into the startup world, which I talk about in my other giving episode, so I won't get into that, but I fell into the startup world. I did catch a little bit of a bug for entrepreneurship, and then that rejection from that biotech company was redirection, as people like to say, and that was I said, "You know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna start my own consultancy." I had a solid 6 months of savings, so I felt I was in a good place to be able to, to try it out, and if it didn't work out, then I would go find a job. And so I did it, and I'm so glad I took the leap because in that first year, I nearly 2x'd my salary from the startup that I was at in the first year. Yeah,
It's amazing.
and the amount of time I was working was significantly less, and it was just the best decision I could have ever made.
And you're not working for someone else, which is always my favorite part.
Ooh, it's a dream, and I could never go back. I don't know how I
I know, never.
would.
So what do you do at Patient Authentic? Tell everyone because I feel like they may not know.
Yeah, you know what, Lauren? The thing is, a lot of people don't know. Even my family. I'm coming up on 6 years of working, of running Patient Authentic, and my family always is like, "Okay, can you explain to me one more time what you do?" Because people ask, and I'm like, "All right, I'm sorry that it is kind of confusing. It's just it's so niche, right? I work in such
Yeah.
but essentially, what I do is I partner with healthcare organizations, many pharma, biotech, patient advocacy orgs, and I help them design patient engagement programs. So that's anything from the autoimmune associations, autoimmune community summit that they run every year. I helped architect that, design it, build it. I work with big pharma companies like Alexion, Amgen, Horizon back in the day, and I help them build workshops that do capacity building for patient advocates. So helping them grow in their advocacy and helping that company build a mutually beneficial relationship with those stakeholders, the patient stakeholders that they serve. So that's at the heart of what I do. And I've kind of got a lot of tricks up my sleeves. So if people ask me for something different, I can do that too. But that's the essence of the work at Patient Authentic.
So what does your day-to-day look like? It sounds like a little bit of comms, a little bit of events, a little bit of operation. What would you kind of categorize it as?
Yeah, I'm going to give the classic answer that every entrepreneur gives, which is every day looks different
Yeah, a
because
little bit of everything.
it does. But it's mostly I thank God I have my executive assistant Jen who helps me with blocking my calendar. I don't really get started on my I won't take any calls until 10 a.m. minimum. I don't want to be on a call before that because you know what? I want the time in the morning to be to myself, to be able to, and we'll talk a little bit about my morning routine, I'm sure at some point, but I want that time to myself to really like get in the right mindset, start my day. I'll do some calls, I'll do some client work, I'll chat with my team. But yeah, it's pretty flexible, but I'll get up and I'll take a walk in the middle of the day or sometimes like this afternoon, it's Friday afternoon after this podcast recording, I'm going to go do some Christmas shopping and that's going to be well before 5 p.m. clock out, but I have nobody that I'm
Exactly.
reporting to, right? I can do that.
That's what's so nice about it.
Yeah.
Uh, And the other thing about entrepreneurship is that it really kind of feeds more entrepreneurship. Ask any entrepreneur, they probably have 10 more ideas in their belt that they want to execute. And when you work for yourself, for better, for worse, you do have that flexibility to do that. So for Lilly, it came in the form of Chronic Boss. Tell us a little bit about when this idea took shape and, kind of how you saw it to fruition. Yeah, just kind of take us back.
Yeah, I'm a little bit insane for having 2 companies. Now, I will say that I started my second one in a time when I was very single. And I do use that term very intentionally, very single. And it was in the middle of COVID and I was looking for work fuels me, but this is also something in all seriousness. I love the mission of Chronic Boss. I love what we're doing. And it came about many years ago, back in 2017, when I was working at Clara Health. I actually had the concept of Chronic Boss came to me, and it was born out of originally. There's a lot of people in the patient advocacy world, a lot of influencers who will have brand names, like you have Mentally Fit Founder, right? And then there are other people. There's Natalie Hayden, who's awesome. She's in the Crohn space. She has lights, camera, Crohn's because she used to be a news anchor. Yeah, it's really
There's a
cute.
lot of them. Yeah.
So things like that, little moniker, if you will. And so I came up with the concept of chronic boss, which is the idea that you can be an ambitious woman while living with chronic conditions. The both can be true. And I didn't have it's evolved over the years. So it started there, and it started kind of as a blog, as a part of my speaking series that I would do. And then over the past couple of years during COVID, I got really involved. And as I started my business, I got really involved in women's networking groups, which Lauren, you are also a queen of being in all the networking groups, which is why you are a mentor and advisor to us. But I loved the concept of women coming together and teaching one another professional development and supporting one another's businesses and cheering each other on. But I saw this gap because I knew, working in patient advocacy and being a patient myself, that there was this other component for people. Chronic conditions, you can't just put them in a box when you go to work. They're there no matter what. You got to deal with them. And so I wanted a space that was going to allow women to talk about work and be excited about work, but also talk about it through the lens of living with a chronic condition. And so that's where the idea started to take shape, that I was loving these networking groups. I had this experience on the patient advocacy side. How can I marry those two worlds? And Chronic Boss was born. And we got started in 2023. I started working on it. And now here we are almost 3 years later, and we are thriving.
So, what would you tell somebody that has this chronic condition and is ambitious? What do you think the big takeaway from creating Chronic Boss has been?
It is that you can do whatever you set your heart to, and you own your narrative. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I want women with chronic conditions to hear. You own your narrative, and actually, your chronic condition makes you a better employee, a better entrepreneur, and stronger. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We talk about all the time on the podcast, and then within Chronic Boss, the secret sauce, this concept of taking a superpower you've gained from living with a chronic condition, something like resilience or flexibility or adaptability, and pairing that with a skill that you have, right, inherently. Right, for Lauren, for you, it's most certainly writing. It could be communications, it could be coding, and you marry those two to talk about your secret sauce. And to me, there's power in owning your narrative. I think so many women often feel like, I don't want people to know about my chronic condition because I don't want them to think lesser of me. But what if we flipped that script and said, no, actually, I have this chronic condition, and I want you, as my boss, my colleague, my client, to see why that actually makes me better suited to support you and to be a team player.
Yep. Yeah. And the cool thing is that we have a worksheet on the Chronic Boss website that you can go to and learn all about your own secret sauce. And it's really just, yeah, flipping that narrative, I think, is the best way to put it. So I think one big thing about being an entrepreneur and a chronic boss really is the ability to recognize when you need to step back, take breaks. That's a big thing in our community. We can't just keep working and, until the boss says to clock out. That's why a lot of us are entrepreneurs, because we need that ability to have a flexible schedule. So what kind of flexibility have you built into your life, and has that shifted over time?
Yes. So I've done quite a bit actually in the past for the past couple of months. It's been an interesting time for me, and I'll be honest, I was experiencing some burnout in the past, probably over the past year, and I didn't see it. My therapist actually was the one who pointed it out. I was feeling really agitated all the time. And also, I've brought this up here and there, but I'm not sure that people know that the timeline. I met my fiance, my amazing fiance, Connor, just, I guess it's this April will be 2 years, but we met in April of 2024 and were engaged by February of 2025 this year. So it's been a whirlwind, but I fought so hard for that. I worked so hard. I had a really, really hard time finding my person. And I'm so glad I found him. And it's been such a magical time. But what happened was I was also hitting a burnout point and hitting, frankly, that turned into a mental breakdown as well with work. And so all of these things were happening at the same time. And what I realized in talking to my therapist over the past couple of months is that, oh my God, I finally have all I've ever wanted when it comes to that. This relationship was a big, big part of something that I was missing in my life and has filled my cup, but I'm agitated all the time and I'm frustrated and I feel like I don't have time for myself. And so I was going through all these and I sat back and I said, what am I doing? What am I doing? And it forced me to reevaluate how I was showing up in work and how I was showing up in life. And so I will say that what contributed to this was reading a couple of books, one of them being The Relaxed Woman. Incredible book, highly recommend. Also, Toxic Grit. We just had Amanda Getz on the podcast. She's amazing. She talks about when ambition gets toxic and how do we tap into all these other different parts of our life and make sure that we're giving them the airtime they deserve. So, all of those things culminated in me saying, I've got to make some changes. And here's what that looks like. I'll start with how I changed on a more a micro level, my day to day. And then I want to talk about some changes I've made in the business. So I now get up an hour earlier. So I'm getting up at like 6 a.m. and I go to bed an hour earlier than I was previously. I've got my Aura ring and I'm obsessed and I track my sleep all the time. And that's probably contributing to all of this. But I get up, I do not look at my phone in the morning. I used to look at my phone in the morning every morning, even though I knew I wasn't supposed to. I would look at my phone. I'd look at email, I'd look at Instagram, that's a terrible way to start your day. Terrible way to
Awful.
start your day. Yeah, no, it's anxiety inducing. If you see an email that's like something you have to get back to somebody or it's a triggering email or something upsetting, okay, now that's the first thing on my mind. So no longer my notifications are off. I get up, I feed the cats, I make lemon water or like lemon balm tea because that's supposed to be calming and stress reducing. And I read my Kindle. I read a book and I sit and I read for a while and I just have that time to myself. And then I work out and then I come back and I have breakfast and that's when I say, okay, now I'm going to open my phone. I'm going to see what's going on in the world, but I've had a few hours of me time.
I love that.
Yes. And so this is me resetting and you know what? It's been so instrumental in helping me show up and be calmer and be more present. So that's been great. That's a key change I've made. Another key change I made that we haven't talked about yet publicly because it's in the process of happening right now. But with Chronic Boss, we came to a realization, Lauren, you and I did, and with some of our leaders that we did not feel the membership model was serving our community or frankly me and our leadership. And we made the decision to sunset the membership, which is what Chronic Boss Collective, as I have a Chronic Boss Collective, we started as just Chronic Boss Collective. We have since expanded to have our media arm and where we have, of course, this podcast and we have our hub with all of our columnists and we offer different courses and resources. But the membership was where it all started. And what we realized was that women were struggling. It was almost the membership was creating an additional pressure on them to be present and to show up when they already felt like they were juggling so much. So they would feel guilty if they missed something. And you could sign up for a year-long membership, but then you go into a flare for 4 months and you don't feel like you can really, you got to take it off the list because you've got to take care of yourself. So that was happening on one side. And then on our side as leaders, I was constantly stressed because I felt like we had members that we weren't able to serve in the way that they needed to be served. We had so many different people. We had people working 9 to 5. We had founders. We had people on the East Coast. We had people in the UK. We had all these different time zones and we were such a small team that to show up and to give what everybody needed because everybody needed something a little different was challenging. And so I was on edge. I was on edge feeling like, oh, I don't feel like we're doing enough for this community. I don't want to disappoint people. And I say all of this. We also, of course, we have people who have made incredible connections in Chronic Boss and they're planning to stay connected post Chronic Boss. And like so many wonderful things came out of it. But what we realized was that this model was not working for either side. And I had to make the decision, as hard as it was, to lead with our values, which is that we need to prioritize both our ambition and our health. And so, as you know, Lauren, I went to the membership this past week and I said, I'm going to be super transparent with all of you. Here's where we are, and here's why I'm making this decision. And I hope that it inspires all of you. If you have something in your business right now that's not serving you or your health, that you take a step back and you reevaluate.
And it's not easy because when you're an entrepreneur, you are in charge and there's no one you can go to and say like, oh, I'm thinking of doing this, should we do it? Yay or nay? Unless you have a business partner. But, most of us solopreneurs are, it's up to you. And when you are the person that has to make the choice, that's even more stress.
Stress. And I will say I'm fortunate, even though I don't have a business partner or I'm not within a company. I, of course, had you and our amazing cohort leaders to lean on in our team and Liz and Beth Ann to give feedback, which was awesome. But it was challenging. I am excited, though. I am excited for what's next. I know we'll talk about that. But this isn't the end, of course, of Chronic Boss, but we had to sunset something that wasn't working. And that's not an easy thing to do. But I hope that for anyone who's listening, this gives you permission to let go of what is not serving you right now, to prioritize your health.
So tell us, what is next for our
Yeah, what
Chronic
is
Boss?
next? So,
Don't bury the lead here.
yeah,
What
yeah.
can everyone expect? I know what to expect, but let's tell everybody else.
Well, what's really magical about this decision that we've made is that it allows us to serve way more people. It allows us to serve way more chronic bosses. So we're going to continue with building out our media arm. We're going to have more podcast episodes next year. We're going to have more writers and contributors to our hub. If you haven't checked out our hub yet, definitely go see that. We have an article just came out from the amazing Justine Biergard, who was on the podcast. She is a sales wizard and she gives so much relatable, concrete advice on how to show up and how to do sales in your business when you're living with a chronic condition. She was hospitalized this year and she still had deals coming in. It was awesome. So she talks about all that. Lauren does an amazing job talking about mental health and chronic conditions and running a business. So you've got to go check that out if you aren't already. So more free resources like that. We're coming to you with more free resources, one. Two, we are going to now be offering a monthly mastermind for founders. And it's going to look a lot like within our Chronic Boss Collective, one of our most popular sessions led by Lauren is our Elevate cohort. And that cohort was for founders who are looking to come together and we do some hot seat coaching. We do breakout rooms where we'll talk about business development or what do you want your legacy to be? How do you stay focused? How do you deal with when your focus is getting pulled in different directions? And these sessions are going to be pay as you go. You still have to apply to get in because we do want it to continue to be a curated group, but you're going to be able to show up. So if you want to come in January, but February, ooh, you know what? I'm really not feeling so hot, or I'm traveling for work, or I just can't make it, you don't have to be there. So you get to come and go as you please and show up and get to be a part of this community. So we're really excited about that. There could be some other pop-up events happening too. Lots on the horizon. We're so excited about it. And again, it's going to be even more accessible, more flare friendly, and allow us to reach chronic bosses and meet them where they are.
Yeah. And I think that's ultimately what we realized is, if we are trying to be accessible to people that aren't usually given concessions, we have to, practice what we preach, right?
That's what a lot of this has been about, right? Is leading with our values, leading by example, and the community has been amazing in receiving this information. And I'm so grateful to our members, and I'm so excited. There are so many that want to stay engaged and are planning to stay connected. There's been some beautiful friendships that have come out of this. I will say, for those of you who have not engaged with us yet, and you're a founder and you're interested in the mastermind, I think you'll really get a lot out of it. There is something special about connecting with other women who just inherently understand where you are. There's no explaining that needs to happen. And in one breath, you can talk about business, and the next you can say, yeah, business, this has been going really great, but I'm also dealing with this flare and I'm not really sure how to communicate it to my clients or how to navigate doctor's appointments while trying to show up for work. So I encourage you, come check it out, come to one. I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Yep. And be sure to check out the podcast too, of course, because a lot of free resources there too. So You end every podcast by asking people, what does being a chronic boss mean to you? So let's hit it. What does being a chronic boss mean to you, Lily? The original chronic boss.
I know it's so weird for me to answer this question. And I honestly feel like the definition for me grows and evolves every time I ask this question and hear from our listeners. And I love that people have made it their own. To me though, being a chronic boss means that you have this ambition inside of you and you have a body that doesn't always work the way you want it to, but you make the decision to prioritize letting that ambition be free while also prioritizing your health. And there is such magic in that. There is such magic in the women that choose ambition in the face of living with a chronic condition. And I just encourage anyone who, if you have a chronic boss in your life, you are so lucky because we are the most adaptable and resilient and empathetic people out there.
Okay, well, we can't end on too serious of a note. So let's end with something funny. If Chronic Boss was a song, what would it be?
Ooh, I like that. I like this question. So I think I'm going to have to go with a song that has been just somewhat my anthem over the past couple of years. And kind of on a sweet note, my dad has told me that when he hears this song, it makes him think of me. And this was before I started Chronic Boss. And the song is Alicia Keys' Girl on Fire. Yeah, we are totally girls on fire. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, this has been amazing, Lily. Thank you so much for having me interview you. And I feel like I learned some stuff. I mean, I feel like I know your story so well by now, but really insightful comments and just interesting nuggets of your story that I didn't really fully know. So I hope this was awesome for all of you too. And we are so excited to see you next season.
Thank you, Lauren, for taking the time to. Lauren is the most amazing volunteer for this organization. She does so much. So thank you, Lauren, for being here. Thank you all for listening to our season one. We've had an awesome first season. We hit the top 25% of podcasts worldwide, which is remarkable. So there's a lot of us out there. There's a lot of chronic bosses, and this is only going to grow and get bigger. So thank you all for being along for the ride with us. Please DM us on Instagram. Let us know, who do you want to see on the podcast next year? You will definitely be seeing Lauren. So be sure to come back so that you can hear her. And Lauren, before we sign off, where can people find you?
Yeah, find me on Instagram, the Mentally Fit Founder, just Mentally Fit Founder. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn, and it's Lauren Elizabeth Perna. So follow me on those two platforms. Reach out, say hello. I love to chat all things chronic boss and mental health.
Lauren is an all-star networker, so definitely take her up on that offer. Thank you, Lauren, for being with us. Thank you to all of our first season listeners. We are so grateful to have you here at Chronic Boss Unfiltered. I hope that everybody has a joyous and relaxing and wonderful holiday season. Bye.
Happy holidays.